Okay. So the title will be on scholarly publishing and research evaluation in the Netherlands, and I will talk about national, university, and institutional level developments. So this is the outline. It's about the national developments on evaluation of research. I'll take you a little bit back in time. Um, Something about recognition and reward developments in the Netherlands. Interesting as it relates to the final part, the last question raised to Tracy as a previous speaker. So then something about the position of open science in Dutch evaluation procedures, which is a relatively new phenomenon in the whole procedure. Then about open science and recognition and rewards at Leiden University. A little bit of how CWTS has been dealing with open science developments. And in the end, I would like to share with you a little bit of our research that we do to show that we are not only, say, reflecting and policy advising, but also do conduct research on open science. So without further ado, let's go to the national developments on evaluation of research. Is that already from the 1990s onwards, the Netherlands has a tradition of assessing research. In the 1990s, it was mostly organized by the Association of Universities in the lead with the so-called chambers. The chambers were actually discipline-oriented approaches to the assessment of research. So a national assessment of physics or chemistry, biology, or psychology was then the standard. Then we have had a situation in the early 2000s where there was some discomfort by universities to the fact that the National Association played a strong role in the development and design of assessments. So a committee actually pulled back the power of decision making back to the universities. However, still the association played a strong role as this, together with the National Research Council and the Royal Academy of Sciences, the KNW. They all three of them they endorse the way we evaluate research in the Netherlands. And what does it mean? Bringing back the power of decision. It is no longer a group of experts from a field that decides how to organize it, but it's mostly the deans of faculties that decide how to organize it and when and under what conditions. Uh, and then that has to be, say, backed up by university boards. When this happened in the early 2000s with the 2003 revision of the Standard Evaluation Protocol, there was a strong reaction by the Royal Academy in the Netherlands. They installed a committee on what it would mean, the new evaluation protocol for the social science and humanities. And they published a report in May 2005. And the main gist of that was the worry by humanists, and you see the expression here, humanists and social sciences were worried about the metrics-oriented flavor research assessment based the SEP could potentially get. And the interesting thing is that a worry about metrics and citation analysis was only mentioned, but never really worked out or, say, more explained how to implement that. So it was rather vague, and still there was a strong worry. That led actually to two follow-up committees. One on research evaluation in the humanities. So the report came out, quality indicators for research in the humanities, and the next one for the social sciences, both led by prominent researchers in the field, professors in the field. And the key issues that were addressed in both reports was how to deal with the specific heterogeneity without standardizing away. We all know about the different kind of publication cultures, different publication languages. How do you actually do take that all into consideration, and how to also embed societal relevance aspect. And the interesting thing is that um, these two reports, although some time ago now, they have quite some impact on the way we now organize the evaluation in the Netherlands. In the meantime, we have a new protocol. The last one that we are now working with was launched in 2020. It's no longer called a standard evaluation protocol. It's now called a strategy evaluation protocol. And it's supposed to guide the organization of the assessments from 2021 until 2027. I can tell you that currently there's a committee working on the new protocol that will be implemented from 2028 onwards for another 6 years. And like I said, it is focusing at the strategies and mission statements. So moving away from a more summative accountability kind of approach of the assessment to more formative evaluations, whereby learning of the assessment becomes more the central focal point in the whole procedure. So it is not intended to be, say, a snapshot every 6 years, but what can you do to with a protocol that you will take with you for the next 6 years in order to keep it, to make it, say, a living document, but also a living procedure for any unit under assessment. Politically, we have been seeing that from, say, 2012, 2013 onwards, our Ministry of Science, Education and Culture became more and more involved in open science practices. So the policies were actually initiated by a first letter to Parliament by Secretary of State Sander Dekker, a liberal politician, and he actually aimed at in 2013 that in 2024 all publications in the Netherlands should be open access available. And he immediately nuanced that by excluding books and book chapters from that, because he understood that that is a somewhat different um, kind of scholarly publishing. But at least in the next 5 years, and it was in 2018, 60% of all the scientific journal publications should be available through open access. That was later aligned with policies that were made by the European Commission that said that in 2020 all publications should be made open access available. So the Netherlands sharpened the targets from 2013 on with another 4 years to 2024 to 2020 as the target to reach full open access publishing. We nearly reached it, I can say, not completely, but it was with respect to journal publishing, we were quite a long way in 2020. Then there was a next letter to the Dutch Parliament, and that's in January 2017, which actually he asked for a broad coalition of stakeholders to together form a national plan for open science. And it's interesting to see that this involved still open access publishing, but a variety of stakeholders, not only the ministry and the Association of Universities and the Research Council, but also, for example, peripheral hospitals, other publicly funded research organizations, but also to take a look on what it would mean to create a full open science perspective for the Netherlands. What would it mean to also change elements of, for example, the infrastructure to make it all possible, to make science more accessible and transparent. So then we saw the launch of NPOS, Netherlands Plan on Open Science. And like I said, it's a variety of stakeholders here. It's the National Organization for Scientific Research, NWO, and their daughters, the Royal Academy of Arts and Sciences, the KNW, and also the institutes behind it, the Association of Universities, at that time called still VSNU, nowadays it's called UNL, Universities Netherlands, Zonnewe, which is the Medical Research Council, but also the Association of University Colleges, and like I said, peripheral hospitals, etc. So they all signed in February 2017 the Declaration of Open Science. And like I said before, the aim was to publish 100% open access publications, to make an optimal reuse of research data. So sharing was what became the norm, and also to develop matching evaluation and reward systems. So let us then switch to how that was actually developed in the Netherlands, because that clear signal from that NPOS plan was uptaken by the University Netherlands, which launched in 2018 the position paper Room for Everyone's Talent, and you can find this on internet. It's in English language, so it's easy accessible for many international readers. And it was a national initiative to change and to improve recognition and reward systems at the Dutch universities. Like I said, initiated by UNL. And the main goal of this positioning paper was to completely rethink the way academic careers are being shaped. So we have moved away already from for somewhat longer time um, using, say, flawed metrics like the journal impact factor and the H-index. But now it would also be possible to think about what it would mean if you would have more flexible career tracks in academia and also a diversification of academic career tracks. So At the moment, it is improving, but until some time ago, it was impossible or very difficult, for example, as an excellent teacher, academic teacher, to become professor. Most of your career development was going through the research track, and that, of course, is a bit weird because there's a variety of academic tasks, and why not recognize and reward them all by the same standards? So all those universities were given the freedom to develop their own recognition and reward procedures within the university context, um, which to some extent is, and I think I have to say that Dutch universities have a high degree of autonomy in the landscape. And it has to do with the fact that we have universities of different flavor and also to some extent different political orientation. Um, so that is highly praised, that autonomy. At the same time, by giving the freedom to develop your own recognition and reward program internally, there was some loss of uniformity across the landscape. Um, you also saw that in some universities there was a decoupling of open science development. So what was just talked about in the end of Tracy's talk, that is something you see now as a somewhat problematic in some universities. And you also see a somewhat mechanistic approach to recognition and rewards, whereby still um, rather, say, clear focus on, for example, research metrics can still play a role in the way academic careers take place. So not a full living up to the expectations of the diversification and flexibilization of academic careers. So what does it mean for evaluation procedures, and particularly the position of open science in that? Um, that new strategy evaluation protocol that was launched in 2020 is aiming at three different aspects of conducting research. So academic quality, societal relevance, and vitality of the unit. And what was being taken out of this protocol is productivity. So there are no standards or norms or expectations when it is about scholarly publishing. And in addition, the new SEP focuses on four specific policy topics, which need to be addressed by the people writing the self-evaluation report and need to be discussed at the site visits by the peers and needs to be recurring in your evaluation report. And these topics involve academic culture, which is mostly circling around research integrity issues and reproducibility, human resources management, which is about mostly about, among others, among acquisition procedures, and it is about training of PhDs. So then you talk, we have a strong orientation at the moment on mental well-being of PhD students, but also their educational development. What do they do themselves in terms of teaching or other non-academic tasks in order to develop them as broad as possible, and open science. And when it is about open science, these are the things that are being mentioned, and I can tell you, if you take a look at the document, you will see that on the other three policy topics, there's much clearer ideas developed about what should be written down or discussed. And what you see here is that the people who actually developed the current SEP protocol had difficulty in identifying and describing what open science actually should be all about. So there are vague notions about stakeholders. So science should be involving external parties in the preparation and aims and strategy of doing research. So related, for example, to citizen science. So to what extent is our academic units opening up their work to other researchers, so sharing, and societal stakeholders in the context of strategy and policy, which relates to publications and data. Um, is the unit itself reusing data from others? How do you store your own data? According to FAIR principles. FAIR stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And it seems to be very difficult to organize for this properly. Another indication of the low um, degree of development of all of these. I think many of these things are still in their children's stages. You see a wide diversity and of practices, and there's a little uniformity until now. Um, so what you can see is that another topic is open access publishing, which is mostly again on journal publishing and not so much on books and chapters or other types of scholarly communication. And another thing is, and that's kind of the escape in the whole thing, and that also shows the somewhat complex relationship of the team that wrote this protocol, is that if a unit has not considered or has not yet developed a full open science plan, you should indicate what are your ideas for the near future. So there is an escape. If you haven't developed it yet, there's space for a discussion on what could be next. So let's then shift from the national level to the university level at Leiden University. And we have the Academy in Motion program. And what you ask, of course, Academy in Motion, what does it mean? Well, it is the forthcoming from two separate working groups that were working between 2018 and 2020. So partly slipped into the corona pandemic. So most of the work was done online. And there were two working groups. One is about open science that led to giving recommendations to the university board based on four pillars: open access, open research data, open software, and citizen science. And the other working group was taking that position paper on board and trying to develop a set of recommendations which would give equal attention and appreciation for various academic tasks, introducing more flexibility into academic career tracks, but in general, including EDI, so equity, diversity, and inclusivity in the way we frame recognition and rewards procedures within university. I was personally a member of that open science working group, and already at the time, some members of the group felt that this particular pillar-based approach was a little bit old-fashioned or traditional. So that was already some shifts to our different ways of thinking about what open science policy could actually entail. So the Academy in Motion program now has three different program lines, like the standard evaluation strategy evaluation protocol. It takes strategy as the basis, and thereby it is aiming at an open, inclusive culture within Leiden University, because we see that in order to change academic work, the research culture and the educational culture on the work floor needs to change. And the policy should be that everything that is being implemented now should be Academy in Motion compliant. So that's what we strive for now. So the challenges for that program, what does it actually mean in terms of internal and external functioning of the program? There are those three program lines, which is actually the standard. And at the same time, we have, say, an issue with the diversity across the whole university landscape. I must say that I mentioned that there's a high degree of autonomy of Dutch universities in the landscape. I must say that Leiden is a rather decentralized university, whereby the deans have a high degree of autonomy and can decide a lot within the walls of the faculty. So how do you actually balance a standard approach, which is initiated by the board, with all kinds of wishes and needs within the faculty level? And another important challenge here is what can we do to make that standard evaluation protocol, the strategy evaluation protocol, confronting with the specificities of every single institute within Leiden University. So there you have diversity again. So Leiden University has at the moment, from the top of my head, 35 research institutes that are all subject to the SEP procedures. So they are on the one hand focusing on those four topics: HRM policy, PhD training, open science, and academic culture. While at the same time, the AIM program focuses on collaboration, cooperating, on sharing, on innovation, and on leadership. And the challenge is now, how do you actually, in all those external evaluation procedures, also take those internal aims and targets on board in order to make it also within the university context AIM compliant. And a next version of that previous diagram is that in the middle you see here the Open Science Research Program at CWTS. So wherever we can, we try to support and the AIM team, and at the same time also have a critical eye on the things that do not go so well in the development and implementation of open science. I'll come to that in a moment. So the CWTS experiences then. Already in 2018, CWTS developed an institutional open science policy based on a co-creation procedure among staff members. So we collectively decided what would be the most important elements of our open science policies, and the things that are listed here were the ones that came out of that collective decision making. Again, I will say 7 years later, it might look completely different, but this is what we thought about at the time. So it is about open access publishing, it is about open research data and software, because initially it was only about research data, but then we realized that having data out in the open without the accompanying software would be a meaningless exercise, because you need the software to disclose your data. And there's a fourth point, and it's I must say that CWTS is a small business unit. We do work for external clients, delivering support for research evaluation procedures. And that, of course, creates some kind of a tendency with an academic institute striving for full openness, and at the same time having a small business unit where sometimes more commercial business-like standards apply. So we try to strike a balance between, on the one hand, academic principles, and at the same time needs for working as an academic unit in advisory work and service work, whereby clientele's wishes should be and privacy should be respected. So we expect our colleagues to live according to the policy, so to make your data and software available and to publish open access, and mostly via publication packages. And that seems to be somewhat of a challenge, and particularly because at CWTS we work a lot with proprietary data, for example, Web of Science or the Scopus database and other proprietary databases like Overton, which is about policy documents. And that creates all kinds of constraints related to opening up our data sets for under the FAIR principles. So, like I said, we contributed to that working group within Leiden University on changes in open science policy. These are the four pillars that were there. But some of the people in the working group argued in favor of a more values-based approach rather than those traditional pillars. So looking at transparency, but also looking at, for example, the elements that are now in the open science recommendations by UNESCO. So equity, diversity, and inclusivity, focus on quality. But another thing that we also criticized the four pillars on is that one pillar that should be also part of that is open governance of science, and it was the strong conviction of some of the members of the team that without open governance of science, that means also public or the administration of science should become more open and transparent and potentially democratic, that would be, say, a key element in the transition from the way we work now to a full open science oriented or based way of working in academia. So then another set of another development is something that we recently launched. I discussed this in my inaugural lecture in June, again inspired by open science principles. What could be done is we could try to think how we can organize a PhD thesis trajectory. And what would be needed in order to diminish the total number of publications on a global scale annually is diminish the number of publications that we require PhD students to publish in their PhD project. But also try to experiment with other types of scholarly communication, like blogs, preprints, policy briefs. And why is that? Because in most cases, PhDs do not end up in academia, but they end up in other work environments. So why not prepare them better for that particular other context? Then also focus on the learning process of doing research, which would include pre-registration and registered reports as part of conducting research, but also experimenting with open science practices. Include reflections on the process, again, that learning element, so what went well, and equally important, what went wrong, because those things can be quite important to learn about what you've been going through. But also, and that's something that I myself experienced, that by aging, you realize that I'm not always on top of the most recent developments when it is about the digital technologies. Um, should I be the one assessing PhD students on that matter? So why not involve people that are more younger and have more clear perspectives on that? And an advantage would be that younger people involved in assessing parts of a PhD project would mean that they learn how to do that properly. And of course, at the end of the day, there should be some people responsible for it, like it is now still in the Netherlands the case, a professor or two professors at least. There need to be two supervisors, but at least try to distribute and delegate the work that is underlying a PhD project to a variety of people. So let me now tell you a little bit about uh, some research we did on open access publishing, and particularly on the failure of gold open access publishing. Hey, you probably remember that in 2018, Plan S was launched, whereby gold open access publishing became the standard, which actually an even more stronger emphasis on the producer pays model. And this is all by the example of the British and the EU and the Dutch open science policies, whereby gold open access publishing was made the standard, and whereby APCs become the cost price for scholarly publishing. The main issue in the discussion after the launch was the low degree of transparency of these APCs. So it would be difficult to see what this new model would mean, what are the consequences of implementing such a model. And by starting this research, I was inspired by something that was published by Robert King Merton, a famous American sociologist, and he introduced the Matthew effect, which is a biblical reference to the book of Matthew, and it basically means it translates in the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. What does it mean? So let me first say a little bit about the data and the methods that I used. So we used um, global numbers of publications coming from Web of Science. We use gold open access journals and their APCs. They come from the DOAJ list. Then we have financial data and the corresponding exchange rates in US dollars coming from the OECD. So what we work with as variables is average APC cost price per country available via DOAJ, the APC cost price converted to US dollars for comparison, and then we have the purchasing power parity, which is a method to normalize to the living standard of a country. And then we have one particular indicator developed by CWTS, the mean normalized citation score, which is an indicator taking into consideration the distribution of publications over research fields. So in order to be able to compare like with like. If you look at this figure, it's publications from many countries in the period 2015-2018. And in red, you see the indication of what is actually the average cost price of a gold open access article, which is about 2,000 US dollars. And if you look at the x-axis, you find the mean normalized citation score. And on the y-axis, you see the average APC costs. And if you then look at the position of Brazil and the position of the Netherlands, you see some very intriguing characteristics. So Brazil publishes about 25,000 publications that carry an APC. And the average APC that Brazilian researchers can pay is about $1,000 for every single paper, which is about 5 times the minimum monthly wage in Brazil. And if you then compare with the Netherlands, we publish about 12 and a half, so half of Brazilians' output that carry an APC rate. The APC that we are willing to pay or able to pay is 2,500 US dollars, which is about equal to 1.6 times the minimum monthly wage. So what does it mean? 12,500 publications against 25,000. The MNCS of the Dutch output is about 36% above worldwide average impact level. And the average APC cost is, like I said, 2,500 US dollars. For Brazil, it goes that they publish double the amount of papers carrying APC rate. They publish below worldwide average impact level, and the average rate is about is about $1,000, which is half of the global average for all countries in the world, which was about 2,000. So if we then apply the theory of purchasing power parity, in which we do not directly compare, but we involve the actual cost of living, then you can say you can make actual comparisons between the two countries. So what you do see then is that, first of all, the average rate of an APC goes up with about $1,000 US. So now ends up in 3,000 US dollars. Um, and of course, the impact scores do not change. It's only the position on the y-axis that changes, as well as um, the total average rate that you pay. So Brazil goes from 1,000 to 2,100, and the Netherlands goes from 25 to 2,800 US dollars on average for every single APC rated publication in gold open access format. So what does it mean? Um, there's a small change for the Dutch PPP corrected APC cost price, and there's a huge increase for Brazilians, um, which is still below the corrected APC rate on a global level, which is about 3,000 US dollars. So once we have applied this, you can see that for Brazil, the average APC cost price has increased to 10 times minimum monthly wage level, because that remains exactly the same if you apply PPP correction. And for the Netherlands, this only increased from 1.6 to 1.8. So the conclusion is that for Brazilian scientists, the obligation to publish in gold open access format as a standard is really tough. They have difficulties in living up to those international academic economic standards. So basically what we are witnessing, while previously we had a paywall to read, we have now introduced a paywall to publish. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention. And if there are any questions, feel free to ask me now or ask me later. And I will stop sharing now so I can see you all again.